Week 3 of the season. How about that? Flying by. You have to enjoy every minute of the women's college volleyball season. That's why we're here. We're Six Rotations. He's Mick Haley. I'm Daniel Gilman. And we're so happy to be with you here in the second week of September. And well, we're going to do things a little bit differently today. We have a fantastic interview with the superstar All-American setter out in Stanford, Cami Minor. This is a big week for Stanford and so many other top 10 teams as the Cardinal match up with the Huskers of Nebraska Tuesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern. As always, we're going to have a great show for you. We're going to break down the AVCA Taraflex Top-25 poll. We're brought to you by SNA Sports, better equipment for a better game. But Mick, instead of a preamble, we're going to jump right into the top 5 because they stayed the same. It stays the same, Mick, because in large part of a dominant showing. Let's start with Stanford at home in a Big 10 Pac-12 throwback style tournament where Stanford and Oregon kind of stood tall against Ohio State, Minnesota.
Yeah, that came out 3-1 in favor of the Pac-12. And I don't know, I felt the Oregon-Minnesota match could have gone either way. Minnesota came on at the end and played better than Oregon. So they saved the day for the Big 10, but that was a very interesting tournament. I still think Stanford, when hitting on all cylinders, is the best team out there. Funny that Kip couldn't produce the way she wanted to in one of those matches, and yet the team didn't let that bother them a bit. They just roared through that. So that pretty interesting weekend there.
Minnesota beats Oregon in 5. Wooker, who is a sophomore, not a freshman. And listen, I read all of your complaints and all of your corrections. So keep them coming. When we have to talk for 30 minutes and you throw some things out there, sometimes you say that an underclassman who didn't make a lot of an impact as a freshman might feel like one. Landfair with 18 kills in that one. Then Oregon turns around, beats Ohio State in 4. Stanford, on the other hand, behind a strong Katie Baird performance with 15 kills. They swept Ohio State, beat Minnesota in 4. Let's quickly maybe go over a couple of the other top 5 teams that really took care of business, right? Wisconsin swept Arizona in the midweek, swept Miami in a tight one over the weekend. Louisville forced to 5 against Dayton on Wednesday. Anna DeBeer came up with 24 kills. Then they got the spotlight, Mick. I don't know if you watched any of the Louisville-Penn State match on Sunday. ESPN2. We're going to get another big ESPN2 matchup on Sunday with Wisconsin-Florida. But Louisville swept through Penn State and looking very strong while doing so. Louisville-Kentucky this weekend in the KFC Yum Center.
Yeah, a real interesting match. I just would focus on Penn State, not Louisville, because I think Louisville's real good. They've been playing well, but they score the ball well. Penn State has trouble scoring the ball against almost everybody. That's why I think they are not going to be able to pull off any really big moves here. Maybe an upset here and there, but they've got to work on first ball kill.
Well, I want to talk about this week in a way that is a little bit more looking forward as opposed to looking back. A lot of golf people like to call Saturday of the golf tournaments moving day. Here we sit 3 weeks in, our 3rd episode of the season. It feels a lot like this is moving week for the premier teams. And I say that because Nebraska looked very solid this week. They swept through Long Beach State at home. They took a Nora Sisless Creighton team, demolished them through a couple, lost the 3rd, 1-4. What do you really know about Stanford? What do we really know about Wisconsin? What do we know about Nebraska? This is the week where everything gets put on the table. Tuesday, so whether you're watching this, Tuesday or maybe you catch a late upload on Monday, Tuesday, 9 o'clock Eastern, Nebraska, Stanford. Mano y mano. What is that? 4 versus 5, 3 versus 4, something like that. I think.
Yeah, 4 versus 5.
4 versus 5 in the new polls. Not to mention Texas, Rice, Monday. That might have already happened when you're watching this. Then you've got Pittsburgh, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Washington State, Texas, Ohio State, Baylor, Creighton, Minnesota, Stanford, Louisville, Florida, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Nebraska. There are 5 to 7 really, really, really good matches. Probably the best weekend of the year in my prognosticating.
Well, those are matchups that really match up well with the poll, don't you think? Because your point's well taken, and I think we're going to find out if freshmen can play against seniors here, because you're going to see some teams that are relying on younger players that we'll see if they can now pick it up in the third week of competition here. And those matches are well worth watching. The only thing that I worry about, this could be a death weekend for Kentucky. They're 2-4 right now. They've got good competition this week. They come out of here. Yeah, they come out.
They got Louisville and Nebraska, Mick. Doesn't get tougher than that.
If they come out of here with 2 losses, 2-6 going into this, I don't see how they stay in the top 25.
Maybe. I don't know. I think that's a good Monday morning quarterbacking to get the overreaction, because at the end of the day, it's the SEC play that really matters for Kentucky, right? I mean, yes, do they want to win some of the really big ones? Let's go ahead and finish up some of this top 5 talk by moving forward into, Florida escaped a threatening 5-set match against Sac State, but there's going to have a real test this weekend against Wisconsin Sunday, ESPN2. But I think so much of this conversation brings in the 6 through 15. So here we sit, 6 through 15. And I think the move up from Texas, certainly not anything they did this weekend. More so, the loss from Oregon pushes them from 6 to 7. Texas played Florida Gulf Coast, usually a team that makes the postseason, beat them in 3. But obviously, as we mentioned, Thursday, Ohio State in Austin, Friday, Washington State in Austin, both prime time, 8 o'clock Eastern matchups. But Mick, I think as we talk about Kentucky, and unfortunately for the Wildcat fans, they're not even in the 6 through 15, so we may have to postpone that a little bit more. But they lost a fun one. It always is wild, Kentucky versus Purdue. But I don't think you can hold a couple of these pre-conference score lines too tight to the vest. But one thing that you can say is the Washington State Cougars, we're feeling pretty good about our preseason pick, about them being underdogs. Washington State, their best ranking since 2015, jumped from 13 to 11, and respectively and realistically, BYU finally takes a stumble, losing their first match of the year. They go from 8 to 13. What do you think of the Cougar Bowl? Washington State, BYU, 4-set win. Washington State's first top 10 win since 2021.
Yeah, and I've been saying that Washington State's got to start beating somebody. They did this at home. They added new bleachers to the end zone of that facility. Makes it really more like the Gregory facility in Austin or the old Coliseum at Nebraska. But not only did they play well, they lost the first set in a nicely competed set, and then they came back and won 3 going away. I mean, the third was not even a contest. They just took it and ran with it. So now, 2 weekends in a row, they're going to have to produce again, but they've got the tools to do it, and they're going to be on the road. So it'll be fun to watch Washington State this weekend.
All right, how about a team that nobody's really talking too much about, sneakily moving their way into the top 10 week by week? Pittsburgh goes out and sweeps Marquette on Friday, sweeps Loyola Chicago on Sunday. They're in the top 10. Pittsburgh is 6-1. Georgia Tech is 7-0. Let's do a little bit more ACC talk here. Pittsburgh, another awakening weekend here. They're going to host Oregon on Thursday. They're going to play a pretty stout James Madison and High Point teams over the weekend as well. So do you think that Pittsburgh, and then in the same vein, Georgia Tech, they'll face Georgia on Friday at home, Howard, and then San Diego? Do you see either of these two teams being on upset alert in a good 7 versus 8 Oregon-Pittsburgh matchup?
No, I have Pittsburgh, and I have Pittsburgh higher than the polls have had Pittsburgh. I think they beat Oregon 3-1, beat them in 4, if not 3-0. I could be wrong, but I think Pittsburgh is underrated here right now, but they have to prove it by playing. So, this weekend will be good. They've got some opponents that are ranked lower than them, but if they relax like Florida did, they could get into a 5-game match, or like Louisville did with Dayton, they could get into a 5-game match. So it'll be interesting to see how they weather that, but I like Pittsburgh. I have Pittsburgh high.
Yeah, Pittsburgh goes ahead and, the move from 9 to 8 is fun because we've got 4 versus 5 this week. We have 7 versus 8 this week. And then moving forward, I'm really excited to see Georgia Tech jump into conference play. Talked about this a little bit ago. Georgia Tech Pitt, not until October 6th. So we can kind of sit on those for a little bit. Creighton is going to have a chance against Minnesota this weekend. Marquette, Wisconsin. Do you see that being much of a battle on Wednesday?
No, I think Creighton's got control of that right now, except for one thing, they can't seem to keep Sis healthy, and that's a bother, because when they have Sis to go with the younger player Martin, they have two arms there that really make them a threat. But back and forth, I don't know what the problem is. I just know Sis didn't play against Nebraska, which was unfortunate, which made that a non-match, really, because they couldn't score enough points. But when both those kids are out there, Creighton's in the hunt.
And that was 8,656 fans in Devaney. And they found out the day before, according to Lincoln Arniel, that Sis had an ab strain, which is an injury that unfortunately feels like Coach Booth is saying indefinite, which, we're going to cross our fingers and hope that she can come back against Wisconsin to make that one a little bit more competitive. Before we round out the six.
That's kind of true, though, Daniel, about abs. Without a long period of rest, they come back at the most inopportune times. I've coached 2 or 3 players that have had that happen. Never knew from match to match whether they were going to be able to go, and you have to be careful. You don't want to tear that thing, or you're done for the season.
Yeah, that's too bad. So now, as we look at the 16 through 25, let's wrap up. Let's look at the full picture here of our top 25 poll. Arkansas downs Western Kentucky in 5 on Friday. That's an Arkansas team that's really keeping the SEC. We call it relevant, outside of Florida, because with the Kentucky dropping, you really needed that other team to step up. So 7-2 right now for the Razorbacks. Mentioned it a little bit, right? Let's talk Purdue, Kentucky. That was a really fun, really classic match. I think they've played in 4 of the last 7 years now, and almost every time they go back and forth, usually in the postseason, Mick, and Purdue gets the best of this one now.
Yeah, but don't forget Tennessee in the SEC. They're up there, and rightfully so. They may be the one team that will keep getting better throughout the season. They're extremely athletic, and when they get in the conference, I think conference teams are going to worry a great deal about Tennessee.
Great point there. Tennessee also swept Marquette. They were in the end of that 6 through 15 spot that was overlooked. But Purdue, 18-16 in the 5th set. Really, really exciting match. Megan Wilson, the new standout for Kentucky, had 16 kills. But Chacon is on her way to a nice freshman, All-American style season right now, the freshman from Nebraska for Purdue. She goes 24-6, 48 in the 5 sets, makes an Eva Hudson match where she hits under 100, really disappear and not matter, because when Purdue has that second standout, they're looking dangerous. That's going to be a really fun race in the second tier of the Big Ten competition.
And they have to shore up their defense there. Purdue has to shore up their defense. With Hudson and Chacon, though, they have got 2 scorers. Now, if they can play defense at the net, they're in the hunt.
So how about the upset of the week last week? SMU, newly announced, they're headed to the ACC just a week and a half ago. They upset Baylor in 5, a balanced attack for SMU. No one had more than 16 kills, but the defense that held Baylor to under 100 in that set. Then they take the first, SMU does, against Purdue, falling in 4, and then SMU falls to Kentucky and Houston. So they had a tough time in that tournament that Purdue and Kentucky were involved in West Lafayette. I think it was the Stacey Clark Classic, which is always a great tournament for a fantastic late great Stacey Clark there. But SMU, Baylor's going to have chances here this weekend, Mick, to really step up. They're going to face Washington State on Wednesday and then Ohio State on Friday. Where do you see this Baylor team? I think the Stowers-McGee combo, I think it's Kara McGee's little sister Elise, really keeping Baylor in a hunt in a Big 12 that is up in the air, really up in the air.
I feel like Baylor's hanging, quite honestly. The SMU coach is former Baylor assistant. So that she put that out there and made a statement that, hey, we're going to recruit evenly now. So SMU is the team to come, but Baylor playing the Big East this week, really want to watch to see if they can hang, because I just feel like they're too young yet and need seasoning, and these matches would be great for them, but don't think they're quite yet. Others, so I have them a little lower. And to go back a little bit, I have Penn State a lot lower, and I'm really concerned about Penn State in the Big Ten because they're having trouble scoring points. They've been a little bit over 12. They need to get up to 14.5. I don't see how they're going to do that, but filling out that group. And then Ohio State at 19, I think that's fair. And I think if they don't have success this week against the teams they're scheduled with, I think they might move a little bit lower with Kentucky.
It's going to be a tough trip down to Austin for Ohio State. They're going to take Texas on. They're going to face Baylor on Friday. It's going to be a really, really fun weekend. Kansas is ranked. They, took down Marquette last week, lost to Purdue in 5. Didn't have too much trouble with Wichita State or Colorado, but nothing's really lined up for Kansas until they will take on teams like Houston and Texas in Big 12 play. And with the new additions of BYU and Houston, the Big 12 regular season is a little bit less of a snoozer, as we usually wait for like the big Baylor-Texas matchup. And instead now there is a lot more integration. You throw in teams like Kansas, like BYU, like Houston. Houston sits at 22. They moved down a spot. It was a weird weekend for Houston. But how about this, Mick? I want to wrap things up by giving some love, showing our flowers to the newcomers. Auburn stays hanging in there. It was an upset weekend for Auburn. They fell to Middle Tennessee State on Thursday, but they stay ranked. Iowa State jumps in, another Big 12 team. Dayton, who almost beat Louisville on Wednesday, they're in the top 25. How about moving from 30 to 25 for Dayton, their first ranking in 7 years?
Well, I think Dayton showed that Dayton and Iowa State both have showed that they should move up in the poll quite a bit. I am impressed with the coaching job at Dayton. Every year, it seems like we say, well, last year they were good, but they're rebuilding, and then they come out. They had Louisville right where they wanted them and couldn't finish right there, but they're in the hunt, and I think they will do well. Not being in a Power 5 conference, I think you got to watch them. And one that I think maybe you'll really have to look at when you get to the Big 12 is UCF. UCF has not really been looked at. They had a coach change, assistant coach took over. They have done extremely well in preseason. They could be a surprise in the conference also.
No doubt about it. I'm trying to pull up some quick schedules here for Dayton and Auburn, and coming up here in the next couple weeks. For Dayton, an A-10 schedule that is pretty weak. So there's a chance that Dayton avoids any upsets this weekend against Northern Illinois, Northern Iowa, North Dakota. They can stay ranked and try to hold on to that spot for a while. But on the flip side, Auburn's gonna have an easy weekend and then start conference play right off the bat, hosting Florida. That's going to be a standalone next Friday. Certainly will be a fun one to kind of see if the Tigers can stay relevant. I like where you're coming from with UCF. We're going to learn a lot about them in the Boilermaker Challenge this weekend. UCF is going to be at Purdue on the 14th, which is a couple days from now, at Illinois on the 15th. Keep an eye. I like where your head's at. UCF right now is the 28th team in the rankings. Washington is 26. UCLA is 27. UCLA went out to Hawaii, beat the Rainbow Wahine in 4, swept Liberty. After Liberty beat Hawaii, it was Liberty's first top 25 win ever. And Mick, you wanted to talk a little bit about Texas A&M. They had a great matchup with Utah State. There were over 2,200 fans down there in College Station. Great atmosphere, but then the undefeated Aggies finally hit a wall. Do you think that the SEC is the most powerful top to bottom conference right now?
I don't know about top to bottom, but I think middle conference, the middle teams, there's going to be a tremendous battle from 3 or 4 to 9 or 10 in that conference. And they're all pretty even and could get better. Like I said, Tennessee, I think, will move up into the top 3 or 4, maybe even to the top 2. They have the ability to do that with their talent. But I think there's going to be some interesting things. Jamie Morrison's got the Aggies going, and he may be missing 1 or 1.5 point scores here, but he's in position to win a lot of matches in the SEC.
So lastly, for Washington, they're right on the outside looking in. They won their 6th straight, a 5-set win over UNLV. May Pertovsky's playing well, Kara McGee, both their transfers excuse me, not Karen McGee. She's in Oregon. But the new coaching staff and the new vibes around Washington have certainly stepped up. I'm going to have them this weekend in Cal Poly at a tournament that's going to have Pepperdine and Washington and St. Mary's. So I'll be able to see what the new look Huskies have in up close and personal. But Mick, I want to end it by talking about a D2 attendance record that broke last week. Nebraska Kearney, right on the heels of their D1 counterparts in the Huskers. They broke the D2 record with 4,003 fans on Wednesday. The old record was Alaska Anchorage with 3,888 fans. So now we get to see D2 coaches watching. Try to get your teams in bigger arenas. Try to break that record. 4,000, I think, is doable. So I'd love to see it continue to get beaten.
Yeah, I've got one shout out. Okay. Southeastern Louisiana, one of the most fun teams in the country. Jeremy White coaching that team, his 5th year. They went into battle with Texas State at San Marcos this last weekend. They won that. They beat Abilene Christian. They lost to Cal, and we should talk about Cal's #1 player, Maggie Lee. But then they go and they play 3 matches in 2 days. Then they jump back in their bus. They drive to Louisiana to play LSU. And don't they just take it to LSU 3-1? And these kids were on fire, but they're led by one of the kids you got to watch. If you can't, you got to get a chance to see this kid, Kaylin Newsom. She can hit 60 balls a night. She's a compact body, wonderful arm swing, effortless arm swing. She got 83 kills this weekend, averaged over 5 kills per set in 4 matches. Now that's some heavy lifting, and she was supported by some of the best effort of athletes that you wouldn't expect to be out on the floor. You should have seen some of the plays they made, not just against LSU, but all those other 3 matches. I witnessed all of their matches this weekend, and I was shocked and surprised, left with a smile on my face for all teams out there, knowing there's hope if you play as hard as you can play and you play together.
No better way to end our segment of this, but we've got a fantastic interview with Cami Miner coming up next. So stay tuned. For Mick, I'm Daniel. We'll throw it to ourselves here. Happy to be joined now by the setter of the year in the conference, first-time All-American in Cami Miner. And Cami, well, first off, I know you and Mick already have a relationship. Why don't you walk us through the youth side of what it was like kind of growing up and what being a setter was kind of thrown at you from a young age?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Las Vegas, Nevada. That's where I grew up until I was around 14 years old. After my 8th grade year, before my freshman year of high school, my whole family, we moved to Redondo Beach, California. And mainly it was for better volleyball opportunities. And so it was a lot of sacrifice involved with my entire family with moving back there. And both my parents are originally from LA. And so my dad, he played basketball at USC. And so we have a very extensive background with USC, which is why I went to the USC volleyball camps every summer for like my entire childhood. And that's how I know Mick. But so I originally started off as a middle blocker when I first started volleyball. And then I was an outside hitter till I was around, I want to say 13 years old. And then my club coach at the time in Vegas, she just saw me setting in an open gym on a Friday night at our club. And she noticed that I had pretty good hands. And so she ended up giving me the advice to why not start trying to set. And so from there, I fell in love with the position. And I was still going back and forth between setting and hitting. So it wasn't until high school where I was setting full time. But I think that was my background and my introduction to the setting position. And so falling in love with just the leadership aspects of it for me, I feel like it really fit my personality. And so I just stuck with it from there.
I love it. The aesthetic, the Stanford Cardinal tree vibes behind you.
Yeah.
Placed here. I do want to know for players, whether, you're watching and you're in high school or middle school, do you kind of feel like you wish that you started setting earlier, or is it okay to kind of give advice to people? You could play all those positions and then figure it out down the road.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for playing all the positions. I'm so grateful that I did that now because I feel like at the point in my career I'm at now, I'm really having to use all of those skills. And it's just, I feel like it's invaluable to be able to be placed at any position that you might need to be utilized at on any given team. And I know I have girls on our college team now that have similar backgrounds. And so if there's an injury or anything like that, they feel comfortable being thrown in at a position that they might not be playing full time, but they played it in the past and they have that skill set. And so I think that if I could do it all over again, I would start setting as late as I did, just because I think it's great to have that complete skill set.
That's fantastic to hear. Before I throw it over to Mick and you guys can get into your setter jumbo, I'm curious because we've had, fun, and you mentioned before we went on that you've watched a few of our interviews, and Logan Eggleston and Yassiana Presley are kind of more of the well-known, let's open up some buttons, let's be a little bit more honest, let's have some fun. I'm curious, a week like this where you've got Nebraska and Louisville, does the week feel a little different to you? Do you wake up on a Monday that's like, all right, we got, as opposed to, and I won't name any names, as opposed to X and Y, two different non-ranked teams that you might have in a week coming up?
Yeah, I think it's been actually a big topic of conversation for our team and how we're approaching um, highly advertised matches like these ones coming up compared to ones that might not be as highly advertised. And so for us, we're trying to shift that mindset from approaching those games differently and taking each match seriously and really respecting all of our opponents, regardless of who they are, because we know we're going to get every team's best, because we are Stanford volleyball. And so I think there, of course, is a little more excitement for our whole team. We always look forward to playing Nebraska, getting a shot at Louisville again. We played them last preseason. And so it's very exciting. And it's exciting to be kind of spending this week at home because we have been on the road a lot. And so it's always fun to host big matches in Maple. So we are very excited for that.
Go ahead, Vic.
So, Cammie, how did you pick Coach Tommy Chaffins to play for?
I know. So my mom, I know she like toured a couple different schools. Miracosta was one of them, Palos Verdes, San Redondo. And I just remember the first time I met Tommy Chaffins, because he's an absolute character. He's hilarious. And he's a very big personality. And I really felt like he cared about me outside of just the volleyball, just as a person. And he really wanted to get to know me, just who I was and my background and my family. And so I think that's what initially drew kind of my whole family to the Redondo Union program when we were embarking on that move. And it was just awesome playing for him. He really emphasized being a great teammate, and I think that's the biggest takeaway that I had from him in my time playing at Redondo. And it wasn't so much emphasis on like the technical side of volleyball. He really just let us play and have fun, just do our thing, competing together. And yeah, I absolutely love Tommy. I had a great experience at Redondo.
So how did he let you set when he knew that you had probably 4 or 5 kills per set if he let you go up there and swing? I used to come down and watch, and I always watched that relationship and how that was going. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so as a freshman, I think we ran a 6-2 my freshman year. And so I was hitting half the time on the right side. And so that was super fun for me. Like I said, I grew up hitting. And so it was fun to be utilized in that way. And then we ended up having some graduating seniors who was the person I was sharing the setting position with in that 6-2 my freshman year. And then from there, it was more about me attacking on transition balls. We had a great libero, Nalani Iosia, who was also a setter. And so she had that background, and we were able to run tempo on out of system balls to the right side. And so that was super fun for us. And so I didn't necessarily need to run a 6-2 and spend that time hitting because I was getting a lot of attempts in transition. And so, yeah, I know it was always difficult for him trying to figure out which ways to utilize me, whether we want me setting full time or sharing that time. But I did both. I did both in my time at Redondo.
Sure. And I got to watch you, but if you'd gone to Miracosta, it'd been a block and a half for me. I could have walked to your matches.
Oh my gosh, I know, right? I always think about that, how crazy that would have been if I ended up at Miracosta.
Yeah, funny. So one last question. You played in Gregory Gym in Austin, Texas, a week or so ago. Takeaways from that event. Besides, you had one of the best matches I have ever seen. Great selection. I have to give you credit for all that, but tell us how that felt and takeaways from that.
Yeah, so I've always said I think Gregory is my favorite gym to play in the country other than our own at home. Just because I feel like the energy is unmatched in their gym. And so we've been looking forward to this match since my freshman year, which is the last time we were able to play at Gregory. And I think it was really cool. We had some really deep conversations as a team regarding our team culture and how we wanted to come together as a team in such a hostile environment, because it's easy to kind of break away, especially in tough matches like that, where you're getting the team's highest will, especially in a loud gym like that. And so I think for all of us, it was about just remaining together regardless on whatever ups and downs were going to be happening throughout that match. And I think we were able to do that at a really high level. Probably, I think it's the best match we've done that in my career here. And so it was really cool. It was a really cool experience to be able to do that and really get everybody's best in a big match like that.
Can you still play better as a team?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's something we're talking about after every single game. We're trying to not focus on the things we've done good, but really talk about whether we're executing at the standard that we've set up for ourselves. And so we're going to still be trying to elevate that up until the tournament, till the end of the year. And so for us, it's just about pushing each other to be better every day. And hopefully we'll be at that standard we want to end up at the end of the year.
Well, I'm going to be following you, so good luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I was gonna say, funny enough, we had Nalani on 2 years ago. We did like a libero episode, and she was with
Yeah.
Texas, so everything.
That's hilarious.
Well, Mick asked you about your high school coach, and I think anyone that's met, Coach Hambly they don't need to know why you picked Stanford. But a couple of years ago, I remember I do play-by-play, and I was on the Stanford Nebraska call on radio, and I met Coach Hambly and kind of chatted with him. And I want to know one or two of maybe like your favorite memories, whether it be picking an ice cream stop on the road and he doesn't want to go, or like, is there anything that you could think of that really keeps things loose, either at practice or off the court with Coach?
Oh my gosh. There's so many things. He's absolutely hilarious. And I think, gosh, I remember one time, I always tell this story. This was last season at Cal. We create our own like team playlist that we listen to when we're at home and we're away. And so I remember somehow one of our teammates ended up playing her like breakup playlist so it was all slow songs instead of like our normal playlist, and on accident. And Kevin got so mad and he called everyone in and he was like, "What is this music? Like, you guys are never playing this ever again." And he stopped our whole serve and pass before the match just to tell us that. And it was absolutely hilarious. And then, oh my gosh, we took a trip to Europe this summer, and we had gone on this bike ride down to downtown Slovenia, I want to say it was.
Yeah,
And
Maribor.
and so we came back and we were biking back. We were all super sweaty and tired. Like, half our team had electric bikes, half of us had regular bikes. So those of us on regular bikes were really struggling. And Kevin saw that, and so he stopped when we were almost back at our hotel, and he bought the whole team like ice cream at a little shop. And then it was just hilarious. It's just he's the best to play for. He really cares about us outside of volleyball, and that's someone I'll have a relationship with like long into the future when I'm gone away from Stanford.
And then before we let you go, a couple quick kind of rapid fire questions. Are
Yeah.
you someone that watches a lot of volleyball without scouting? Like, are you watching other matchups throughout the weeks?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Our whole team. So we're living in a freshman dorm on campus right now, and some of us have TVs in our room, and so we'll all gather like 10 of us in one tiny little room, and we'll watch. We watched Wisconsin versus Arkansas, like Nebraska versus Creighton, just a bunch of different matchups, and we love it. And for me personally, I'll be laying at bed at night just watching clips of other teams playing. I think it's all super exciting and it's really cool. I have a lot of friends that I've played with in the USA pipelines that are at all these different schools, and so it's cool to watch them, be able to support them from afar.
And then was there kind of a conversation? I remember I reached out to Erin Virtue, the Michigan coach, and she was like, well, Coach Harbaugh's mentioning that we might be able to get inside the big house for another football. What was the mindset of watching that game inside Memorial Stadium? Obviously 90,000 is a ton, but even if it was like 40,000, right? Like, that's still a crazy jump from 8,000 or 9,000 in Devaney.
Oh my gosh, it was absolutely incredible to see. It was almost it made me a little bit emotional just because it's something that I feel like volleyball has deserved for so long, to see them really put everything together. And some of my best friends are on that Nebraska team, and they were just raving about that experience. And so it was so awesome, incredible to be able to see.
Can you even like picture playing outside, like indoor volleyball?
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say, whenever I see the Nebraska girls, because they're gonna be on campus soon, I want to ask them how that was playing with the sky above, and like if that was messing up their depth perception and all that, because I know sometimes playing beach volleyball that can like be a factor. But it was incredible to see. It really was.
Well, thank you so much. Tuesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock local. Is there any sort of like trash talking that you enjoy, especially with the ones that you're closer with, or is it going to get civil?
You know, not so much any type of trash talking. I remember my freshman year playing when Nebraska was playing here at home right before the game. We were on other sides of the net and we were just chuckling, looking at each other across the net because it's funny being able to have that new perspective of playing against each other. But it'll probably be the exact same thing this time around too.
Fantastic. Well, she's Cammie. For Mick, I'm Daniel. Thanks so much for watching. This is Six Rotations.